Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at eTrailer, and today we're taking a look at installing the eTrailer trailer hitch receiver on a 2022 Chrysler Pacifica. This is an exposed cross tube, meaning you are going to see the portion of the hitch that runs up to where it bolts into the frame, but overall this one's tucked back pretty well to where it's not too right in your face. Some of the other hitches that you'll see, it's pretty apparent that the hitch is there. This one, it's tucked back a little bit and it gives it a pretty clean look overall. Now this is a 2" by 2" receiver tube opening, so this is going to be really good for a lot of different accessories. This is kind of the standard in the industry, so if you're looking for ball mounts or a bike rack or cargo carrier, you have plenty of options available. Now when you do put your accessories in place, you're going to need a 5/8 pin and clip, as the hitch does not come with one. A lot of your accessories will come with it, but it's going to be required to keep those in place. Now if you want a locking one, they have those available here at eTrailer, and they're really nice because you can lock those in place, leave your accessories on, and you don't have to worry about those accessories disappearing in the hands of someone else. Now if you plan on towing, you're going to see a plate style safety chain loop here, which is going to be great for your standard hooks, or even a larger clevis style will go around there pretty easily. Now when choosing some accessories, you're going to want to know from where the pin and clip hole is to the furthest point in the rear fascia. That way you can determine your ball mount or if your folding accessories are going to work well with the vehicle. So from the center of the hitch pin hole to the furthest point, looking at about 4.5 inches. So you should be good with most accessories. Just check those when choosing yours. That way you know for sure it's going to work well with it. And then our ground clearance, we're coming in at about 12.5 inches. So I don't ever really worry about this making contact with the ground, but as you have your accessories loaded up, especially your suspended bike racks and cargo carriers, as you go up an incline, those are going to dip down a little bit. So something to keep in mind when going up large inclines or if you're on some rough or rocky terrain. If you do plan on pulling a trailer, you're going to want to know the capacities, and this one's pretty decently rated. You have a gross trailer weight rating of 4,000 pounds, which is going to be the trailer and the accessories loaded up on that, and you're also going to have a tongue weight rating of 400 pounds, which is going to be the downward pressure on the inside of the receiver tube opening. So that's going to be more so your suspended accessories like your cargo carriers or bike racks, and with 400 pounds you would have a pretty hard time overloading that or the cargo carrier or bike rack, but just adhere to that when loading it up. Now this can be used with weight distribution, and with that hitch it's going to bump those numbers up. So you're going to bump that gross trailer weight rating up to 5,000 pounds, and your tongue weight's actually going to go up as well to 500 pounds. Now before hooking up and just towing, you want to check the vehicle's owner's manual to see what the Pacifica is actually capable of towing, and then compare it with the hitch and just take the lower of those two numbers. That way you don't overload it and you stay safe out on the road. As far as the installation goes, this one's not too terribly difficult. There is going to be a little bit of trimming involved as far as the heat shield as well as the underbody panel, just to make clearance for the hitch, and you are going to be dropping your muffler down, which it's just 2 isolators that you're going to pry off. So this can be done in your garage or in your driveway in about 45 minutes to an hour with some basic hand tools, and I'm going to walk you through all the steps. That way you can get your hitch installed. Let's take a look at that video now. To begin our installation, first you're wanting to determine if you have an underbody panel, and if you do, there's going to be quite a bit of hardware to take off to get this down. We're also going to be doing some trimming, but during this whole process, highly recommend having a spot to keep all your hardware. It's going to make installation a lot easier. So I'm going to start off with my 8mm socket here, and there's going to be a series of screws that we're going to be removing. So on the driver's side wheel well here, you're going to see 2 vertical ones, and they're kind of behind the tire here, as well as one down here. So we'll go ahead and get these removed. And then from here, we're just going to kind of follow the fascia. So we'll see one here, and then not all of these 8mm are actually attached to this underbody panel. So one here, this one is not, and then this one is. So just kind of go through and push up, and if it's attached to it, you're going to want to go ahead and remove that. Some of the other ones are just on this fascia panel here. So we'll just go ahead and make sure we get all these 8s. Next, you're going to want to grab a 10mm socket, and we're going to start by taking this kind of middle underbody panel off. You'll see these two silver screws, so we'll go ahead and get these removed. And that's going to gain us access to these plastic nuts. There's also going to be a few more. So as we kind of look back, we'll see that we have two on the driver's side here. And then there's also going to be two here as well as one in the center. So we'll go ahead and get those removed. And these are plastic, so you don't have to get too crazy on them. They should come off pretty easy. And once you have all those plastic nuts taken off, you're going to see that there's going to be these plastic screws here, and those are going to be removed by just using a large either Phillips or flathead. And we're just going to kind of undo these. They should be pretty easy. And once they kind of get down, you might want to pull on the underbody panel to separate it. Since they're plastic, they can kind of push back on, so make sure you don't put too much pressure. And a lot of times they are going to stay in that underbody panel. So with those taken out, we should be able to take our underbody panel. Don't let this go too far. We're going to be doing some trimming later before we put this back up. So just kind of keep this handy. We're also going to be removing our heat shield, and this is just going to be some 10mm plastic nuts as well. So they're going to be kind of tucked up here. So in order to get to those, we're going to want to lower our exhaust down. And that's going to be pretty easy. There's going to be some rubber isolators that are going to be right here. So we're going to go ahead and get those off, and that's going to allow us to drop this down to gain access to those nuts and also get our hardware in place for the hitch. Now, to remove our isolator, sometimes they can be a little bit tricky because they can kind of seize up to that metal. So to kind of help it along, I'm just going to spray some heavy duty silicone here. You can use a penetrating oil or even a soapy water solution will help kind of move that along. And then you can use the muffler or the tailpipe here as leverage with a pry bar, or even a long flathead screwdriver will also work. And you can pop off the top or the bottom. It really doesn't matter. I'm going to try to get our bottom here. So just kind of push this along. So we have that one popped off. Now there's going to be one more that's going to be right at the rear cross member. And normally we support our exhaust, but there's going to be another hanger down there. So we should be fine to just pop this off. So same thing, I'm going to just spray a little bit of this lubricant. And that pops out pretty easy. So that's going to give us that little bit of extra room to move this out of the way. So we'll go ahead, grab our 10mm socket, and we'll remove our plastic nuts. Now we can take our heat shield. I'm going to go ahead and trim out our heat shield, and this is just going to give us room for our hitch to go on that frame rail. Now, the instruction manual has it pretty aggressive as far as cutting all the way up here. I don't think that's necessary, and I think just for structural sake, I'm going to just cut back a little bit shorter than what they suggested. This will still give you a little bit more adequate heat protection. Now, as far as cutting, using a pair of shears seems to be the best option on this kind of metal. Now be careful because there's going to be some sharp edges obviously once you do this, so just be careful not to cut your hands. But we'll just go through, get this trimmed out, and then we can actually get our heat shield put back up in place. So just kind of tuck this over. Now we've lost one of our mounting holes, as you can imagine, just cutting that portion out. So these two here, the underbody panel goes on there, so I'm going to go ahead and just get this one attached, and that's going to hold it up there for us. So to get our hardware started, we're going to be using a fish wire technique to get our carriage bolt and our spacer block in the frame rail, and these are going to face down, and that's going to give us the mounting stud for our hitch. Now we're going to start here on our driver's side, and we're going to start at this hole that's right here by taking our coiled end, and we're going to just feed this all the way down to our access hole. And this hole back here is larger than this one, so this is where we're going to feed our hardware in. So just be careful that this end of the wire does not feed all the way in the frame rail. Otherwise, you're gonna have to start over here. So just putting a light bend in this can kind of be a nice way to make sure that it doesn't feed through. Now, on this end here, we'll just take our spacer block and we're gonna just feed this into the frame rail. We'll then take our carriage bolt and we're just gonna thread this on this coiled section here. We'll go ahead and grab our end of the wire and then we'll tuck our carriage bolt in, kind of jostle this through, and that's gonna create our stud here. Now on this one, it's gonna be slightly different. We're going to take our coiled end and just feed your spacer block on there and just kind of hold that with your hand. You're then going to thread the carriage bolt on and then put the carriage bolt first, then your spacer block, and then we'll have this set up on our on our driver's side. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the passenger side. It's going to be very similar, but there's going to be a total of 3 of them. Same thing, you're going to want to work from the furthest one, moving back to the closest access hole. So we'll get that done and then I'll show you how it looks. Here on our passenger side, you can see the way that we have our hardware in place. So just make sure you have those holes. We're gonna go ahead and you'll see this ground screw that's gonna be on our driver's side. And this is attached with a 10mm nut. So we'll go ahead and get this taken off. And this is going to attach later to our hitch, so we'll just go ahead and take this off the stud and just set it up here for now, as we'll bolt this up later. Now with an extra set of hands, we're going to go ahead and get our hitch in place. We're going to feed this over the muffler. Now while we do this, you're also going to want to take those fish wires and run those through the according holes. That way as we feed this up, it's going to keep everything kind of in line. So just kind of lower that exhaust down and then we'll go ahead and do the same on our other side here. And then as we raise this up, you can go ahead and once we get that stud pulled through, you can pull your fish wire off now, or you can uncoil it, kind of whatever works best for you. But the main thing that we're going to want to do here is make sure that that doesn't get fed back up in the frame rail. And we're gonna just get one of the flange nuts hand tightened on here on each side, and that's gonna support the hitch and allow us to get the rest of our hardware in place without having to support it. So you can see this is taken off, and the pressure of the hitch is kind of keeping this in place, but if not, you can use a screwdriver or your finger to kind of just put pressure on it. And then once you get one hand tightened on each side, that's gonna make it a lot easier. Now with all of our hardware in place and hand tightened down, I'm going to go back with a 3/4 inch socket and tighten them all down. Now you don't have to get too crazy here because we're going to go back with a torque wrench to get the proper spec, but this is going to cinch our hitch up. So just go through, get these all tightened down. So I've gone ahead and tightened everything down. So now I'm going to go back with a 3/4 inch socket and our torque wrench. Now if you need a torque wrench, we have them available here at eTrailer. You can generally rent them at an auto parts store, and the torque setting is going to be found in the instruction manuals. This is just going to make sure that it's not going to be too tight on the studs, putting stress on them, but also it's going to be tight enough to not become loose over time. So we'll go through and torque these down all properly. Now our passenger side is going to be a little bit trickier to get to. You probably noticed while tightening down. So you might need to use a swivel here, or you can kind of still move the exhaust around since we have it off the isolator still. So just take your time here. Now we're going to take our ground that we previously took off, and you can see there's a hole in the hitch for this to go back up. Now normally this has these little slots that kind of go into the chassis, but we want a nice flat contact here. So what I'm going to do is put the flat section against it, and then we're going to use our hardware that was on here originally, and we're going to tighten this up. So just make sure it's sitting flush. So the head of that flange bolt's kind of in the way there, but we should be able to get this in place and flush against the hitch. And in the instruction manual, they're going to show you where they suggest to cut, and that's just going to be on our driver's side here, and that's going to gain us that little bit of clearance. You can see it's basically going to wrap around this, so it's a long slit, and they do give you measurements, but I've found that sometimes they're not exactly spot on, and I want a nice clean fit here. So just kind of aligning our holes here. What we're going to do is measure from the center of this hole over to where this hitch portion is, and then I can just mark it here and then make that cut. So this is a good way to give you a visual before just chopping into it. That way you get a nice clean fit. So if you need to, you can make a little mark with a paint marker or a permanent marker, and that's going to give you that spot on measurement. I've gone ahead and just put some tape down here just to kind of give myself a visual cue to get some nice straight lines, and I used a paint marker to mark those out where the hitch was. You can see there the red paint, and it's going to be about a 1/2 inch gap that we're going to want to have to make sure that that fits in there. So I'm just going to use a pair of shears. It cuts through these pretty well. So go ahead and make your cut, and it's going to be about 10 inches down, but really what I try to do is make a cut, see where we're at, and then I can trim accordingly. You can always cut off more, but just take your time, get a nice clean cut here. Now, I did have to go a little bit further than the 10 inches that they suggested in the instruction manual, and really it kind of helps to kind of get these halfway in place, and if there's a little bit holding this up, you can kind of just give it a relief cut until it's perfectly there. So now we can just go ahead and get our underbody panel in place. So just make sure that you're getting these ones in before putting this in, and that you're also tucking them all into them properly. So all your metal clips should be hidden behind something before you put your hardware in place. So we'll go ahead and get this all put back together. Now also make sure that you get both your exhaust isolators put back in place. And that was a look and installation of the eTrailer trailer hitch receiver on a 2022 Chrysler Pacifica.